Hi, good evening. My name is Jonathan Weber, and I'm the Deputy Director of Florida Conservation Voters. And tonight is another part of our continuing series of conversations with FCV endorsed candidates. Tonight, it is my distinct pleasure to chat with Miami-Dade Commissioner Daniella Levine Cava, who is running for mayor of Miami-Dade County. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this event all week.
Well, I've actually been looking forward to being part of the FCV endorsement group for about 2 years.
Well, sorry it took so long. We have a process. We got to stick by it, but we're delighted.
Actually, it was before I even filed to run that I had it in my mind's eye. Thank you very much. I'm so delighted to be here.
Excellent. Well, so tonight, I guess we just go ahead and get started. And I just want to tell you, one of the personal reasons that I'm so excited for tonight is that, I grew up just up the road in Broward. But of course, I spent a lot of time in Miami-Dade, as a lot of Broward people do. My first job was actually in high school, was working at WPBT Channel 2 in North Miami on Sesame Street. It's on Sesame Street. And I still have a lot of close friends in Miami, and I will always consider South Florida home in some way. But it is my love for South Florida that pushed me into environmental politics. Of course, climate change is the greatest threat facing Florida, especially coastal counties like Miami-Dade. So my question is, how can Miami build with climate change in mind, and what is the mayor's role in that?
Well, thank you again so much to Florida Conservation Voters, to you, Jonathan, to Carson, to the board, to everybody who helped make it possible for me to be your candidate. I'm really thrilled. I think it's the first time that you've endorsed a local candidate, if I'm correct.
It sure is, yep.
So it's a tremendous, tremendous honor. There are many people that care about the environment, but there aren't that many groups that actually endorse. And so this was, like I say, the kind of the gold ring that I was hoping for. I was also endorsed by the Sierra Club and by Love Water and by the Miami-Dade Democratic Environmental Caucus. So those are the four that could possibly, and I'm just so proud to be the four-time winner. But let me say the role, it hasn't been an active role. And that is a very prime reason that I am running to be mayor. Because like you said, Jonathan, we are at the front line. We're ground zero for climate change. Our water supply, the Everglades, 1/3 of Florida's drinking water is from the Everglades. The fact that we are having more than our share of sea level rise, also because of the slowing of the Gulf Stream and other factors, puts us at being the most assets at risk in the world. So we have certainly more outsized responsibility to take care of these things. And there really wasn't leadership within county government. When I came onto the county commission 6 years ago, I was astonished. We were in that analysis paralysis phase, study upon study. Some of those studies are still coming due. This is from 6 years ago, and very little in the way of action has actually happened. And reports that I've asked for have been languishing on the mayor's desk. Clearly not a priority. And I like to say, we really don't have anybody in charge of the environment. We do have an Office of Resilience. That's great. That was during my time, I lobbied for that. We became part of the 100 Resilient Cities. And we hired our chief resilience officer. We hired up staff to do important work, but it's moving too slowly to action. So as mayor, the resilience office will report to me. The Department of Environmental Regulation, which has been a reactive, not proactive office, will report to me and will become a proactive office, not just waiting for applications to opine upon. And also water and sewer, which, I've had to bring those three entities together to communicate, to plan together. So we will have a plan. And that's how I'll be at the forefront. I am the water warrior. And of course, that includes good energy policies and climate policies too.
I love it. And that's a wonderful answer. And I love the term, the analysis paralysis, because I feel like that is a real thing. I up here in Tallahassee, you see that all the time. And the clock's ticking on climate change, right? I mean, like if we're gonna get a grip on this, it needs to happen like yesterday, right? So as fast as possible. So that's why leadership like yours is just so incredibly important, because you clearly understand what's at stake, and you are willing to, put the things in place to make sure action happens as fast as possible. So thank
Yes.
you so much. But speaking of, Tallahassee and the other governments, when state and federal leaders fail to act on climate, it's up to our city and our county governments. They can step in and fill the gaps. And so
Yes.
the question is, how have you worked with state and federal officials to act on climate, or what do you plan to do when you are mayor?
Yeah. So I just got off a call with our Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, who's also been a fierce advocate for the environment. And she was telling us about some of the programs that they're working through. Of course, they have to get agreement on the Senate side as well, and of course the president. But clearly we need to have a good bench of leadership across the different levels. And, these are bipartisan issues. One party does not own the environment. I mean, we all own the future. So I do think that there are engaged and informed leadership on both sides of the aisle in Washington, and we just have to shake it loose. And part of the way we do that is working together as a delegation. Our state delegation has been rudderless. Our state delegation has not functioned cohesively to support the needs of our community. There's been, I don't know, too much ego, too much fighting with our county, and honestly, our current mayor has been in a pissing match too often with the members of our state delegation. And so we've not been working together to do the things that are needed, whatever those are. I mean, maybe environment was not his priority, but whether it's transportation or bringing infrastructure money down for water and sewer to convert from septic to sewer. I mean, there's many projects that we have left on the shelf because we've not worked effectively as a team. So we do have one of our state leaders, Jose Javier Rodriguez, Senator, is one of our, really forward thinkers on the issue of the environment. And we need to bring everybody around the table. So I think, what I bring is collaboration, my middle name. I've been saying Daniella Collaboration Cava, and this is how I'll roll. We will bring together the federal delegation, the state delegation, and we will have a plan together to address these concerns. Like you say, what can we do locally? Well, for example, we're dealing with the issue of our wastewater. So we've been mandated by the State Department of Environmental Protection to stop sending our water out to the ocean outfall. And the cheap alternative is to pump it underground. Well, that is extremely foolish and short-sighted because all of this water is precious and dirty water can be cleaned, and putting it underground does not do any good for anybody. So, I've been pushing as commissioner to have an alternative plan, Plan B. We were hoping that Florida Power and Light would use a good bit of it for cooling towers. Of course, they instead got permission to extend the use of the cooling canals, which of course we opposed and is a bad idea because salt water is entering underground to our aquifer as a result. But there is also a plan to use some of that wastewater for another cooling tower. And I'll be pushing hard to have more of that water be cleaned, discharged as part of our restoration plans for our wetlands. I mean, these are win-win situations, and we need to push through.
Definitely, and I agree. And we need leadership from every level of government, but I really do feel that local government in a lot of these roles, they really have to play the leadership role here and to bring other government levels of government along. And I think that it's on TV and the news. I mean, the partisan back and forth. I mean, sure, that might 9 o'clock news. Everyone wants to see that. But at the end of the day, when people come home, they want to see politicians working together and solving problems that actually affect people in the community. And climate change is really the greatest challenge. But there's so many options for collaboration, and I love that middle name of yours. I think it's great. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Definitely. You did mention water, and you are known as the water warrior, and you are a fierce advocate for protecting our environment and water resources. So how did you get that name, Water Warrior, and why is water just in general so important to you?
Well, honestly, my background as lawyer and social worker has been around children and family policy and working in communities. And I'm a great lover of the environment. grew up hiking and going into wilderness areas with my family. My husband was someone who grew up on Biscayne Bay, so his love was the water. We met in Atlanta. There wasn't really much of a waterfront, so he took up kayaking and canoeing. So we did many, many river runs, and our vacations have always been wilderness, Alaska rivers, you know, Western rivers, and many, many wonderful vacations and weekends in the Everglades. So, you know, I came to love this environment for how pristine, how peaceful, how holistic. I mean, so many incredible things about the environment. And then but I was never actively working in that. But I came into county government 6 years ago and nobody was paying attention. And you know, hair on fire, like, hello, don't you get it? You know, the seas are rising. Our fresh water is at risk. Our Everglades are being diminished. Our future is at stake. How can you not be paying attention to these things? And I guess starting with the saltwater issues with our aquifer and the FPL canal system, I had a seminar to look at those issues. And I said, you know, again, I have to engage fully in this issue. And I anointed myself the water warrior. and then I got various groups to pledge to be water warriors. So I tried to make it something viral. And then I was awarded with an award from the Deering Foundation as water warrior. So it became official. And when I got the endorsement from Love Water, they actually called it the Water Warrior Award as well. So I'm so glad it's become a thing, because we really need everybody to be on the water warrior team.
Agreed. I mean, that should be all Floridians should be water warriors. Our state is so dependent on fresh, clean water. And, you know, especially in Miami-Dade County, I mean, our quality of life, our economy, everything is tied so closely to clean water and protecting wetlands and that whole, the ecosystem process there. And I just love hearing you talk about that. It means so much to me. But speaking of the Everglades, you know, it is the absolute gem so one of the gems of South Florida, I should say, and certainly one of the reasons why a lot of people like me growing up in South Florida, it inspires us. The Everglades was an inspiration. I mean, they teach it to you in school, and you learn about the Florida panther, and you learn about roseate spoonbills, and before you know it, it's like your mind is just exploding with how can we help, how can we protect it, and can you talk to me a little bit about the role of the Everglades in Miami-Dade County and why it's so important, and why should we protect it?
Well, you know, we're a World Heritage Site. We're acknowledged globally as the unique ecosystem that we are. So from a pure biodiversity perspective, it's truly amazing. Of course, it's been drained and diked and all of that. It's a remnant, a shadow of its former self. And all the things that we have done to try to restore the water flow are engineering feats. So, you know, it's quite an extraordinary, I don't know, story of man and nature, or humanity and nature. Recently, I've had the opportunity to speak to the Miccosukee tribe. And of course, here's a people that coexist in this environment, and they are the true stewards of it. And they fortunately want to partner with Miami-Dade County to increase an awareness, a respect. And I'm very excited to move that forward as mayor. I think that has so many benefits, you know, for they're so credible as an information source. It will help people to understand their culture as well and create that connectivity. So I'm very, very pleased and proud to have had that conversation. But I would say from a more personal, poetic perspective, it's the peace, the tranquility, the disconnect from the problems that people have made in terms of exploiting the environment. You know, we're so fortunate to have this incredible expanse and such a unique system. And, you know, it's not something that you necessarily appreciate initially, because we're used to, you know, mountains and streams and beaches as the primary place that we go for refreshing and solace. But there is so much subtlety and beauty in the Everglades. And if you just cross the Tamiami Trail or Alligator Alley at different seasons, you can see it. And then to understand the incredible flora and fauna that exists there. You know, we still have the panthers. We still have, well, now we have invasives. I mean, that's a whole other thing. We have an incredible problem of these tegu lizards and the pythons. And, you know, that is just another example of how, unfortunately, we've not appreciated and valued that nature. But I think, you know, it takes a little time. It takes a little education, taking a slog, walking with, you know, water up to your hips through the cypress. These things are hauntingly beautiful. And so worthy of our protection. You know, I'll mention I earned the endorsement of Clyde Butcher, our fabulous photographer. That was another incredible honor. And he's never
did it come with a picture.
Well, he did provide a picture for the person that donated most on that.
Okay, right. Because that's
which was good. That was a good thing. But just to say, you know, my home is adorned with an incredible photograph that was my husband's 10th anniversary gift. And we're married now 30 plus years. So definitely something that we treasure. But his endorsement really, you know, I'm hoping to get the Miccosukee endorsement. And I'll just hold up here for you something. I hope you can, your viewers can see this. So this was me on one of my cross Everglades trips. And, you know, this is where, you know, where you drop in off of the Tamiami Trail, you push through the trees, and then you launch on the very shallow bit of water. You only go at the high water season. You sleep on your canoes until you get to the Chickies, which is a couple of days in. I've done the trip 3 times, my husband many times more. And these things are unforgettable. So that is about me and my love for the Everglades.
Yeah, how remarkable. I actually, I'm so amazed to hear that you've done that trip 3 times. I mean, that's a commitment, and I think that really does show. I mean, there's something magic about being in the Everglades, or really any large scale kind of project like that, and it's, you can't put it into words what it makes you feel and how it makes you feel better. And I mean, there's all sorts of studies that say being out in nature helps, you know, your mental health and everything. And I'm just so glad to hear you say that. But going from large scale, you know, ecosystems, they're also smaller kind of neighborhood parks are sometimes a child's first experience with nature is the park near their house. Like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Broward, and one of my favorite memories in my entire life is playing in the county park, which was right behind my neighborhood. And I wish that every child in Florida has access to some sort of green space or park nearby where they can get away from the street, away from, you know, TV and Nintendo Switch. You know, like I do tell my son all the time, like, let's go outside, time to go outside. And so my question for you is, what is your plan to enhance and expand parks and green spaces in Miami-Dade? And how have parks played a role in your life, like in the neighborhood level?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a huge supporter of parks. In my first year in office, I've tackled like a major challenge each year in office in the budget process. And the first year it was the parks, because in the county budget, parks are really the stepchild. There's no dedicated source of revenue. You know, they come out of the general revenue pot with lots of competing needs. Like really covering post-recession, our parks were very neglected. We cut back on the maintenance, the buildings were falling apart, the programming for all ages, but particularly children, had been cut back. And, you know, I think it's great that post-COVID, not because we're not post-COVID, but in the COVID era, we have such a new appreciation for parks and open spaces. Right. So I see that as very promising. People recognize, and of course we see so many more people out in the parks and walking and running. And I was not actually in favor of shutting down the parks when we did for that very reason. But in any event, I think we have a newfound appreciation, and we have a great master plan in the county for our parks that would have a park within 10 minutes of wherever you live, which would be super. And so we need to buckle down. We really need to have a dedicated source of revenue for parks. That to be said, I also, am part of a National Park Conservancy movement. I've visited many, many of the national parks. But like you say, just plain parks in the neighborhood and a safe place for children and all ages to recreate. So valuable. And I want to mention too something called nature deficit disorder, which is a thing. And for sure, especially with kids at the computer screens all the time now, it is so important to disconnect, to get outside. And, just like being in nature, when we have power outages like hurricane, that's when people are out and about. There's no air conditioning maybe, so they're outside to get a little fresh air. And those moments I always treasure, because I do think they bring us all closer to nature and closer to each other.
Definitely, and the nature deficit disorder, I mean, that is an interesting concept that I think needs to be explored as much as possible, because it's true. If kids aren't outside, and adults, just like you said, if they're not outside playing, something's missing, I think, a little bit. And I actually read one study. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you say your study and then I'll say.
Okay. Well, I read one study one time about how sometimes kids' eyes don't develop properly because they're not outside looking long distances.
Oh.
And like their eyes, actually, because they're only looking 2 feet ahead of them at the screen or just in their house. So being outside actually helps like vision and eyes. There's all sorts of things that are beneficial to kids being outside in the early developmental stages. And,
isn't that wonderful? Such a wonderful point. Well, that reminds me to tell you that I did grow up hiking every weekend with my dad from about the age of 5. And so that was clearly a formative experience for me. And he was an explorer, he was all over the world, and we lived overseas, and we always took vacations in extraordinary natural settings. So, I mean, I really, I grew up with this in my blood. And I was going to say about nature deficit disorder. Oh, my granddaughter, who's going on age 3, I've not seen her since February. She lives in DC because of the COVID. But we've started to get books that I can read to her remotely. And she really, really loves the book Llama Llama, Red Pajama. And so I saw another Llama Llama book. I ordered it, and it was about Llama Llama Goes Camping. And, my granddaughters go camping. They're camping right now this weekend. So they're being brought up to love nature as well. But this book was very distressing because it was all about one of the campers who brought all his electronics camping. And he was constantly being told, no, we can't use those electronics, leave it behind, get in touch with nature. So, the story was much more about weaning the child from the electronics. But I mean, the point to be made that is exactly what we need to do.
Exactly. Great. I love that. Well, one of my last questions here is, Miami is a city that's always growing and changing, county is always growing and changing. And just how will you help make sure that we grow and build in a sustainable, resilient future for the county and for our residents?
Yes, it's such a wonderful question. I mean, we could talk about the climate change and all the things that we have to do for infrastructure, all the things we have to do to protect our water supply, to build in ways that, are friendly with water, because we know we'll have a lot of water and a lot of flooding. So there are all those things. But I sort of took your question maybe more so about our attitude. And for example, we have a lot of pressure on developing outside our urban development boundary line. So we have this unique line. It's not a perfect line. It's historically kind of jagged, but it is intended to protect our open spaces and our agriculture, which is our buffer to the Everglades. So as it's been more and more difficult to sustain agriculture because of competition from foreign countries, imports, the various diseases, we struggled with tropical fruit fly, other things, and also not that much of an interest in farming. So the farmers' age is increasing, and the children are not necessarily interested in farming. And so there's a huge pressure for farmers to sell out for development to provide, a legacy for their next generations.
Right.
So creating that awareness, that love of these open spaces, the appreciation for the uniqueness that we have. I mean, the fact is, in Miami-Dade County, you can go from the most dynamic global inner city to, of course, suburbs, and industrial and commercial spaces, to farmland within 45 minutes. And it's extraordinary. It is unique, it is special, and we need to harness an excitement about that, make it more of a tourist destination, more of a revenue stream. And I've been working on that, and I will continue to work on that, so we can really have the best of all worlds.
I agree. Miami-Dade is remarkable, and just how you put it, with the global inner city to suburbs, and then immediately it feels like you're not even in Miami-Dade sometimes. And
Exactly.
I've been down all throughout there, and it feels like a different world, and it's amazing. It's all in one community. That's fantastic. Well, so just in closing, can you tell just a little bit about your state of your race, what's happening, how people can learn more, and what they should do, and what are some dates coming up?
Excellent. So in Miami-Dade County, the mayor's race is countywide, public participation. It's nonpartisan, so everybody votes together. Even though it's called the primary, this is the nonpartisan primary. And you have to win 50% plus one to be mayor. So there is a field of 7 candidates, 3 which are less financed and less well-known, and then 4 that we'll call the major candidates. I'm the youngest politician of the 4, also the only woman of the 4, and certainly the environmentalist of the 4. The election is August 18. We've already, by tomorrow, probably about half of the anticipated voters will have voted either by mail or early vote, which is really extraordinary. So by the time we get to August 18th, it will be a much smaller number of people to come out. So the election is underway. We are, of course, welcoming volunteers. We're doing most of the campaigning virtually. So you can get a call list. You could say, I'm an environmental voter. We think it's important what happens in Miami-Dade County. We want to help her get elected. Also, of course, we take your donations, which for the primary, we can only take through the 13th. So that is the deadline for financial contributions. And mostly your network, because at the end of the day, it's all about who votes. And people have to be enthusiastic about voting. We know that we have low voter turnout in this primary. So we want to make sure that people do not sit this one out. Right. It really will matter. I really will be a different mayor. The difference is not only about my commitment to the environment, the difference is that I am independent. I am not a career politician. I'm not beholden to big business. People don't expect me to vote for them. In fact, many of my donors know very well I voted against them, and they still want me because they know I'll be fair. They know I'll do my homework. So that is the kind of person I'll be. Honestly, this is different from what has existed in Miami-Dade County Hall for many years. And so it really matters. Also, I'll say that they tell me that the mayor of Miami-Dade County is the second most important elected office in Florida after the governor. So you could take it or leave it, but that's what people have said to me. And, you know, it's of course, because we have a lot of people, almost 3 million people. Of course, we have a huge budget. It's about $9 billion. But it's because we have an outsized influence in what happens in the state halls and also what happens in federal government.
The country.
So, and the country. So especially since it's most likely I will not win outright in the primary. It's most likely there'll be a runoff, and I do expect to be in it, that the November 3rd election will be so critical to the future of our nation. And I will be in a position to call forth an excitement and enthusiasm about these issues locally, state, and nationally. So I really can be a game changer, not only for Miami-Dade County, but
yes. Tell us your website one more time.
Daniella.vote.
Perfect. Love it. That's a great, that's like a perfect website.
I
Love
know
it.
that's like the
Great.
best thing
Yeah.
ever. I love
Yeah.
it.
And so for the rest of the time, all the other Daniellas who are running, they're going to be jealous of you now. So
Because I've got it.
you got it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. Is there anything you'd like to add to tell the conservation voters across the state?
Well, you know, I've traveled Florida and I know about the great, beautiful natural places all over the state. And actually, it's just giving me a bit the chills because I've had the opportunity to visit so many of these places. And I stand with you statewide on the preservation, the protection of all the ecosystems, on the you know, on the springs, on the savanna, on the swamps, on the rivers, on the coasts. So, you know, we stand together for the protection of this incredible, beautiful place that we call home. And I want to fight with you to get it done.
I love that. And you know, on behalf of conservation voters of Florida, like, thank you for your leadership. I mean, it's we say it all the time. It's like we need conservation leaders everywhere we can find them. And to have somebody in Miami-Dade County like that would just, I mean, it would be a game changer, like you said. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I love this conversation. Again, this was the best Friday night I've had in months and months, I'll tell you that. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And if you need anything, let me know. And I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching. And that's all I got.
Be safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Be safe, be strong, and enjoy the beauty of nature.